Hello friends, very good evening greetings to all of you. Today evening I'm feeling really delightful and pleased to address you once again on this amazing platform. Dear guys, as promised in the previous session, I'm going to discuss the core intricacies of the Indian economy as disclosed by Mr. Satya Nadella, the great pioneer, the CEO of Microsoft, who is on his visit to India currently. And he has disclosed certain very important facts about India. He says India is an exception to the challenging world. So, the Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said the world, especially the tech sector, should brace itself for 2 more years of struggle before it can see the growth again. According to Mr. Nadella, the current downturn being experienced by the tech industry is because the demand spurred by the COVID-19 pandemic has begun to cool down, and that coupled with a recession in several parts of the world has basically resulted in a normalization. Mr. Nadella added that he is extremely optimistic about India, given its wealth of talent and opportunities. If we see all of the world's software developers, India is actually number 2 already. And in fact, when it comes to artificial intelligence projects, India is number 1. And so, this next phase is going to be an AI age, that is the artificial intelligence age. And you have to be long on India. Mr. Nadella said during the interview, there are basically 3 factors that add to his optimism about India. He added, India is a hotbed for startups. I think it's number 2 in the world in terms of startups, Mr. Nadella said. Secondly, what strikes me as just phenomenal is just the people upskilling themselves in India is actually double the global rate. And all that's translating ultimately into the Indian growth, into Indian productivity, Mr. Nadella added. And finally, the fact that India is growing at 6 to 7% is the cherry on the cake. So, isn't it really encouraging to listen to such encouraging words by the great pioneer leader, Mr. Satya Nadella, who is the Microsoft CEO? Moreover, friends, we are also going to discuss the core intricacies of the Indian economy, which truly explain that this decade belongs to India. Policies put in place before and during the pandemic have laid the foundations for the sea change in India's economic fortunes, doubling of GDP and attaining the position of 3rd largest economy in the world by the end of this decade. Now, after such encouraging discussions, we will also be discussing certain very important aspects about the national Fert policy, which is in works to boost the local manufacturing, that is boosting the Make in India theme. The government is already working on a national policy to boost the local manufacturing of the fertilizers and reduce the overall dependence on imports. So I'm pretty sure that you all must be full of enthusiasm and full of excitement for today's session, because I have given the brief overview of today's discussion and I really believe that it must have charged you completely for today's session. So without any further delay, let's begin. So, as per Mr. Satya Nadella, India is actually showing intense tech usage. Microsoft investments significant. These are the strong and powerful words by the great pioneer leader. India's technology usage as a percentage of its gross domestic product growth is actually very high. And the country's work in creating the digital public goods such as Aadhaar and the unified payments interface is astonishing. Microsoft chairman Satya Nadella said in an interview to ET's Surabhi Agarwal, Javed Syed and Bodhisattva Ganguly, the Hyderabad-born chief executive of the $198 billion US-based technology behemoth, said the next big wave will be artificial intelligence, and that he was excited by AR/VR, that is artificial and virtual reality, and the metaverse. The Microsoft-backed popular open AI platform ChatGPT will also be integrated with several of its products, including search engine Bing, he said. Mr. Nadella also spoke about the future of technology companies in a deglobalized world and how Microsoft was planning to ride through the economic uncertainty. So here begins the interactive session with this great leader. The first question put to him is, what will fuel the Microsoft of the future? To which he replies, I basically focus on two things. First, core sense of purpose and mission of the company, because ultimately technologies will come and go. Microsoft had an identity of being a tech platform so that others can create more tech platforms. That was an opportunity in 1975. I think it's more of an opportunity in 2023. So I just want to stay grounded on that. I have always said that the big wave which is coming next is going to be artificial intelligence. I'm still very excited about what's happening with AR/VR and metaverse because the creation of a sense of presence is actually very important. Ultimately, I want to translate into something like computational chemistry, which we need desperately for our energy transition. But the foundation, if I look at all those three, they build on the cloud. If I look at what's happening in AI today, these large foundational models that we are talking about and we are really very excited about were only possible because of the cloud. And we did in terms of very differentiated work in Azure to be able to model and train these large models. Today's technology, sometimes used well and in innovative ways, helps give birth to the technology of the future. Now, the next question put to him is, what role can India play in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and the metaverse? To which he says, my sense of optimism for India comes in multiple ways. What's happening with India and digital public goods is nothing other than astonishing. I mean, nowhere else do I see such rigorous effort being put. I met with the people behind Bhashini. They showed me how they are converting speech to text and text to speech. In fact, they have used ChatGPT on the government documents and showed me some unbelievable capability. The small businesses are basically using technology to grow, like Senco Gold in Kolkata or the large banks like the State Bank of India. The Tatas, the Reliance, Jios and Adanis and everyone else are all creating technology. And let's not forget the startups. Whether it is InMobi or Lambda Test or Udan, they are all demonstrating intense usage that I have not seen before. As a percentage of the GDP growth in India, technology usage is actually very high. Already on GitHub, the number 2 country is India. On LinkedIn, the rate of essentially skill profiling in India is twice the global rate. So that shows the other aspirational side of this great country. Now, he was further questioned, can you give us a sense of Microsoft's cumulative investment in India? To which he replies, it is actually significant. There are three ways I measure Microsoft investment in India. One is whether we are making technology products in India. Historically, we built products elsewhere and we sold them here. Whereas now we make the products here. We have the largest development center outside of the United States. We have put significant capital investments in building out 4 large data centers, and we have even partnered with Geo, building out their own data center. So we are making significant capital investment in building out essentially the modern day factories called data centers. So that's us making in India, which is leading to all the others making in India. But those companies that are making in India are not just making in India. They are making for the world. We work with Lambda Test or InMobi to create them everywhere else. I repeat, we work with Lambda Test or InMobi to make them and take them everywhere else. The next question put to this great leader is, Microsoft-backed ChatGPT has become hugely popular. How do we see you building the products on top of these AI offerings? Is an integration with Bing in the offing? Does it put you in direct competition with Google? To which he replies, I like it when $10 billion plus businesses in India in terms of Microsoft like Bing are sort of considered somehow not existent. So it's a good position to be in because you can surprise the world. We are very excited about our partnership with OpenAI. It's the most successful, most real use of large models in some real world scenarios. We partnered with Open Artificial Intelligence to bring that to life. So when Andrej Karpati tweets saying that 80% of his code is now being written by an AI like Copilot, it's actually phenomenal. You will soon see us do more with it across all domains. Today, it's available as Azure Open APIs. We will keep expanding that because we want to make sure that these are the large models that are available for every developer. The fact that Bhashini can use GPT, that to me is as big as anything else. I want to make sure that we use it to change what happens in customer service with the dynamics in contact centers, what happens with nuance, where we have DAX today as an AI product that just completely changes the physician's works. What's happening with Office 365 and Microsoft 365 and how Microsoft Designer today uses DAL-E to help the people create designs. In Power Apps, you can prompt the workflow automation. So yes, we look forward to the sort of seeing what's possible in every domain, including Bing. He is further questioned, how do the technology companies function in a world order where the amount and degree of globalization seems to be decreasing? To which he replies, there is no question that the world is going through a new phase of figuring out what configuration of globalization works for them. I think that we as companies have to navigate what is clearly a more complicated geopolitical world. But ultimately, I want to stay focused on how are we actually helping. Our license to operate in any country fundamentally exists because we create the local surplus, right? I mean, take Ukraine. With Ukraine, we have a very simple principle that when anybody is being attacked on the cyber domain, we help to defend. And in the case of Ukraine, we were right there and said, how do we help the government of Ukraine continue to function when they are under attack? So, to me, we want to meet the real world. We are an American company subject to the American foreign policy, but we ultimately will be tested in India or the country we are operating in. How we are able to create the local surplus, and if we do, we will have a permission to operate, and if we don't, we will get kicked out, and deservedly so. So that's the way I think about every country. As long as we do that, I think the multinationals like us will stay grounded. Now he's put a question, is the plan to buy TikTok dead? To which he says, I'm very focused on Activision Blizzard and completing that transaction. And the next question asked us, you said technology is actually a deflationary force in an inflationary world. What is your outlook for 2023? Do you think the things will get worse? To which he says, I am not a macroeconomist, but the fundamental point I was making there was it's actually sort of showtime for all of us in digital technology to be able to say, look, here is how you can use the most valuable resource to do more with less. Therefore, fundamentally, move to the cloud. When you move to the cloud, you use less energy. That's deflation. You use it more efficiently. That's deflationary. In fact, if you write a cloud native app, that might be 100x, sometimes better than what you may have done in your data center. So those are all deflationary forces that are available for the people to exercise in a time of crisis. We are, like every other company, going to be the subject to what the world GDP growth looks like. We are not immune to it. And we will have to adjust. I make the commitment that our operating costs are going to be in line with our revenue growth. Therefore, we will make sure we are investing in a disciplined way for the future, and we stay grounded in the fact that we need to be competitive. The next question put to him is, Meta and Google have significant partnerships with Reliance. Do you plan to partner with more Indian conglomerates across some large areas like data centers or other segments? To which he says, we are partnered with everybody. Jio has an Azure Geo region. So they are investing significantly in our cloud. We are partnered with Mr. Adani. We just recently announced that they are going to be using Azure as their partner for all their infrastructure. They are also partnered with us in building out our data center in Hyderabad. We are partnered with Tata's. Tata Digital is actually built completely on Azure, and we are really excited about this super app and the progress they are making. So, the large conglomerates in India are all people that we want to make sure we co-innovate with. The difference between us and many of our multinational competitors is that our business model requires others to use our output to create more valuable output for themselves. So, it's not creating dependence on us, but It's about creating independence with us. That's our strategy, and we will stay focused on it. Now he's further asked, will you prefer to look for a strategic partner in India? To which he says, I think when you are a company like Microsoft, I want to make sure that our technology gets used across the board. Anything that is going to help us reach every Indian citizen across every Indian organization on any given day is our preferred partner. I always wonder how many people are employed in the India partner channel around our technologies. Microsoft is unique. We learn from others who came before us, but I feel no one asks the question, how many people have built businesses around this company that are successful? Having one exclusive preferred partner that we bought off for some distribution and is not strategic for India. Actually, what is strategic is to evaluate who is investing in India to help India grow. Now, the next question asked from this great pioneer is, what role will India play in the technology of the future, especially in artificial intelligence, metaverse, and quantum computing? The first thing is that there is a study by this Dartmouth professor called Diego Kumin. He did a fantastic longitudinal study of the diffusion of technology from the 1700s to, I think, he has updated it to 2020. The fundamental thing that he talks about is that you should take the latest and greatest technology and make sure that the diffusion rate of that technology inside of your country is actually very high. So, get it in and don't use it trivially. Use it intensely to create more valued and added output. Technologies used in small businesses, public sector, large existing multinational corporations, and unicorns. That's what is actually important. To do that, you need human capital. But that's where India already has an advantage. You take my 2 data points or 2 of the 3 data points of GitHub and LinkedIn, and you add up that and say, oh wow, we already have the human capital that already knows about all this technology and has the aspiration. This technology is coming, and let us apply it not just in 5 unicorns, but apply it in a public sector like Navratna. Let's apply it in a government, in a small business. That, to me, is what I think India should be doing and is doing. So, your words of great appreciation are really very, very encouraging for us, and it inspires us to really create miracles, and you have helped us to self-realize that we are actually the true assets for the entire global economy. Thank you so much, sir. Now, after this great, insightful, and in-depth analytical discussion wherein Mr. Satya Nadella discussed the core aspects of the technological progress being made by India in every possible domain, is actually very, very worthwhile. Now, dear friends, going forward, let's see that how this decade actually belongs to India. India's economic momentum post-COVID-19 has been the inheritance of its own actions. It comes from a few years of heavy lifting on policy. The story goes back to 2007 when the profit share of the gross domestic product was soaring. But the rise got arrested following a major move in the policy via the Rural Employment Guarantee Act. Implemented in 2006, this law marked a transfer from the profits to wages. Eventually, higher wages should result in higher profits as they lift demand. But this does not quite work in India. Given India's surplus labor and uneven and often short supply of goods and services, higher wages have led to a rise in the consumer price inflation and stagflation rather than a rise in the real growth. For India, a policy to boost profits and then investments which create jobs and wages appears to be a more reliable approach to generating higher real growth. Indeed, the experiment between 1999 and 2004, which then caused the profits to boom between 2004 and 2007, is actually the evidence of the success of this approach. The government ultimately announced the policies to lift the share of profits in GDP starting September 2019. It actually started with a meaningful reduction in the corporate tax rate, making the regime comparable to the rest of Asia. The rate was reduced from 34.9% effective to 25.2%, and a special lower rate of 17% was announced for the new manufacturing companies. Furthermore, the government took calibrated sector-specific steps and during the pandemic has undertaken further policies directed at lifting the share of profits in the gross domestic product, including the PLI schemes and increased infrastructure investment. These changes since 2019 topped some tough reforms in the preceding 5 years, including the Goods and Services Tax Law, that is the GST law, the Real Estate Regulation Act, that is RERA, the Bankruptcy Code, and the new inflation framework. The change in policy should not be underestimated since historically India has used tax revenues to fund social spending rather than corporate earnings. During COVID-19, a silver lining emerged for India as the global CEOs became more comfortable with both work from home and work from India. The number of global in-house captive centers that opened in India over the last 2 years was almost double that for the prior 4 years. During the 2 pandemic years, that is 2020 and 2021, the number of people employed in this industry in India rose from 4.3 million to 5.1 million, and the country's share of global services trade rose 60 basis points to 4.3%. In the coming decade, the number of people employed in India for jobs outside the country is likely to at least double to over 11 million, and we estimate global spending on outsourcing could rise from $180 billion per year to around $500 billion by 2030. This will have significant effects on both commercial and residential real estate demand. If India is already the office to the entire world, it is increasingly becoming its factory as well. As the manufacturing capex rises, helped by the government policies and Morgan Stanley's multipolar world thesis, which is prompting the localization of supply chains. Multinational companies are actually seeking to diversify the production but are also attracted to India's growing domestic market, and government policy is making the decision to locate the factories in India an easier one. We estimate that the manufacturing's share of GDP will rise from 15.6% currently to 21% by 2031. Which implies nominal output jumping from $447 billion to about $1.49 trillion. Moreover, India is also undergoing digital transformation at the population scale driven by the success of Aadhaar, which is designed to process high volumes at low cost with small value transactions and is the basis for India's stack. India's internet model is actually different from the world, as it is founded on India's stack, a public utility that is a highly inclusive transaction-led model and provides interoperability and basically democratizes data and is decentralized. The reasons for the success of India's stack include the government support for technology-based solutions, its ability to solve the market and social needs, and open source AI-driven technology built at the population scale and supporting the institutions for implementation, that is NPCI for UPI, RBI for account aggregator, ONDC for digital commerce, UIDAI for Aadhaar. The stack has 4 layers, that is eKYC, DigiLocker, eSign, and multiple payment layers including UPI. That has changed the way India processes the documents, invests, and makes the payments. The stack adds 3 significant layers that will alter the way India lends, spends, and insures. The first, OCEN, that is Open Credit Enablement Network, is actually disruptive to incumbent banks but will simultaneously raise the credit penetration by transitioning the system to the cash flow based lending. It also has the potential to lower the credit costs due to enhanced data access from multiple systems. This will democratize the credit at a population scale for both consumers and businesses. The second, ONDC, that is the Open Network Digital Commerce, will aid the onboarding of merchants across the country, give consumers access to the products hitherto available at higher cost, and enable interoperations between the buyers and sellers. This is a major disruption to the consumer sector as the products move from unbranded to branded and small traders modernize, with OCEN enabling credit at scale. The third new layer, a digital health ID, will enable a unified interface that will be interoperable across the health service providers. It will actually allow customized insurance solutions and give the population better healthcare access. So all these layers are based on the user consent, and we expect rapid adoption as we have seen with the payments. India is actually experiencing a major shift in the energy dynamics as well. Access to energy is fundamental to prosperity. India's daily per capita energy consumption is around 800 watts, excluding food. This compares with 9,000 watts per capita per day for the US. Given the big upgrades to transmission and distribution over the past few years, we see a step change in India's energy consumption to about 1,300 watts per capita per day over the next decade, bringing with it economic prosperity. So a simultaneous shift in energy sources from fossil fuels to renewables, with 2/3 of India's new energy availability to come from clean sources like solar, biofuels, and hydrogen, underpins a major shift, even as legacy capacity using the fossil fuels will not be destroyed due to the growth in energy consumption. This will improve India's terms of trade, entail about $726 billion in capex, reduce inflation volatility, improve the living conditions by lowering the pollution, and create the new demand for electric solutions. I repeat, this entire phenomenon will help improve India's terms of trade, entail about $726 billion in capex, reduce inflation volatility, improve living conditions by lowering population and by lowering the population's uneasiness because of the pollution, and create the new demand for electric solutions. So with these changes, by 2031, we expect India's GDP to more than double to over $7.5 trillion. The stock market to compound annually at 11% to around $10 trillion, a discretionary consumption boom led by a rise in the per capita income from $2,000 to over $5,000, and a quintupling of households earning in excess of $35,000 per year to over 25 million, a rise in the credit to GDP from 57% to 100%, causing a 17% annual compounding of the credit growth and a doubling of India's share in global exports. We believe India is set to become the world's third largest economy and stock market by the end of this decade. As a consequence, India is actually gaining power in the world economy, and in our opinion, these idiosyncratic changes basically imply a once-in-a-generation shift and an opportunity for the investors and companies. We estimate this new India will drive a fifth of the global growth through 2031, led by a combination of offshoring, unique digital infrastructure, and energy transition. Of course, many things could go wrong, including a prolonged global recession or sluggish growth, adverse outcomes in geopolitics and/or domestic politics, policy errors, shortage of skilled labor, and steep rises in energy and commodity prices. That said, we believe the pieces are in place to make this India's decade. Now, this wonderful write-up has been presented by MD and Head, India Equity Research, Morgan Stanley. Really a very wonderful effort, dear sir. Providing an in-depth analysis to all the aspects, all the possible aspects with the best effort, which can very beautifully explain that why this decade belongs to India. Now, going further, let's discuss certain aspects of the National Fert policy which is in works to boost the local manufacturing. Now here we have built such a strong foundation, we have realized that how wealthy we actually are. So let's basically explore certain aspects of the Make in India theme our PM has been propagating since so many years. That is the Make in India. So now here it comes. The government is working on a national policy to boost the local manufacturing of fertilizers and reduce its overall dependence on imports. Isn't it remarkable? The roadmap of the scheme is likely to be announced during the upcoming budget, and it will consist of the special incentives to set up the fertilizer units and reduced import duty on raw materials with a focus on organic fertilizers, people aware of the discussions said. Work is in progress for a draft national fertilizer policy, and the budget may provide a roadmap regarding this, an official told Economic Times. A duty reduction on imported phosphoric acid and ammonia to improve the competitiveness of the domestic fertilizer manufacturers has been a long pending demand of the industry. This was one of the suggestions during the pre-budget meetings of the finance ministers with the representatives from the agri sector and agricultural economists. Another proposal is to give an incentive for the promotion of the organic fertilizer industry, as India already has the potential to become the hub of organic fertilizer production, and this will be in accordance with the long-term food security strategy, the officials said. The Niti Aayog is basically already working to promote organic fertilizer production and has set up a task force under its member Ramesh Chand to assess the status of the local production and devise the ways and policies to promote the cattle economy, converting them into economic assets. The center is also considering running a campaign to increase the use of organic fertilizers. India is among the top fertilizer users, and despite the demand, it relies heavily on imports, pushing both import bills and subsidy burdens. So now is the correct time to actually rely on the domestic production instead of being extremely dependent on imports. The high cost of natural gas, along with the disruption of exports from Russia and Ukraine, caused the prices for the chemical fertilizers to more than double in the last 2 years. This is increasing the financial burden on the center, which is funding a large portion of the price hike through subsidies to safeguard the farmers' interests. The fertilizer subsidy bill has gone up in the last few years, going up to 1.62 lakh crore rupees in 2021-22 from 83,000 crore rupees in 2019-20. As per the estimation by the economists, the subsidy requirement for the fertilizers is expected to be 2.5 lakh crore rupees in the ongoing 2022-23. Now, my dear friends, let's have an overview of the booster plan. The national Fert policy to consist of the special incentives to set up the units, lower import duty on the raw materials with a focus on organic fertilizers. Third, the budget likely to provide a roadmap on the scheme. Next, Niti Aayog is basically working to promote organic fertilizer production. The fertilizer subsidy bill has gone up to 1.62 lakh crore rupees in 2021-22 from 83,000 crore rupees in 2019-20. The center is actually planning the campaign to increase the use of organic fertilizers and reduce the dependence on the imports. So this great and insightful article is really relevant to all of us because it helps us to explore the basic aspects of the national Fert policy, which is in works to boost the local manufacturing, wherein we have studied that the government is working on the national policy to boost local manufacturing of the fertilizers and hence reduce the dependency on imports. So dear friends, after this great and insightful discussion of the overall aspects of the Indian economy has really charged us with great positivity, and it makes us really proud that we are so wealthy, and our overall strategies, the overall framework of policies is really remarkable, as being appreciated by Mr. Satya Nadella as well, who is the CEO of Microsoft, world's renowned company. So, after discussing this multifaceted analysis and interactive insights shared by the great pioneer, I would like to conclude my session here itself. I hope the session has helped you to really broaden your perspectives about our motherland, and really It's really worth a pleasure to basically count our areas of strength, which is really remarkable, really remarkable. So I also wish that you subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you keep getting notified about my sessions, the important discussions we are having here. And in order to make our session two-way, I would like to request all of you to please post your feedback in the comment section, and in case you have any queries, please post those queries as well, so that I may answer your queries, and any type of modification you require in our sessions. I welcome your suggestions so that I can implement those modifications in the subsequent sessions. Thank you so much, dear guys. Thank you so much for your patient listening and wonderful cooperation. Namaskar. Jai Hind.